April, UNESCO brought out these numbers that, schools had closed across 192 countries. And, these school closures were affecting as many as 1.6 billion learners, right? Students. So 91% of all students in the world were affected by these school closures. So at some level, it was also very clear that it was very important to do an annual status of education report this year. ASER stands for the Annual Status of Education Report. With the country shutting down in March, right? And across, not just the country, the world shut down. One thing that was extremely clear was there was going to be a huge learning loss with these school closures. Schools are still not open. But also apart from that, things that we have taken for granted, like universal enrollment since 2010, even as early as 2010, 6 to 14 enrollment was in excess of 6 to 14, was in excess of 95%. But with this, it's possible that with family budgets getting squeezed, that we may actually see an increase in dropout rate. So the way we thought about doing ASER was that, do a survey focusing on different things at different times. So the report that was just released, we called it Wave 1, which focused on accessibility to learning materials by students during this period when schools have been closed, right? So it was done, in a like a 2-week period simultaneously across the country in the month of September when schools had still not opened. The focus was on, figuring out whether children had access to materials. Did children get learning materials that were being sent by school? There was a fair amount of information available on it in terms of what the government was doing. But we knew very little about whether children were receiving this material and what they were kind of doing with it, what was going on in the household. So like all ASERs, this is a household survey. The phone calls were made to the household. And then, because of recall issues with the survey, the questions that we asked about learning materials were focused on the previous week. So when the way the questions were asked was, did you get any learning material in the previous week from the school? If you did, then in what form did you get it? Did you get it through, WhatsApp, worksheet? Did you get it? Did somebody come to your house? Did you get a link on your phone? So those were the kinds of things that we asked. And then, so that was the thing. Did you actually get the material? And then we also asked questions about who helps the child at home, right? Who helps the child at home? What did you do? Did you do any activity in the last week, right? And then if you did any activity, what medium did you do the activity with? And then did you do any activity on an online, so attend a web class or go through an online resource? Now, if you look at whether households received learning material, only a third said that they got some learning material from the schools. Okay, and if they got it, most of it got it through the WhatsApp medium. But having said that, right, even though only a third said they got some material, 80% of the household said, or children said, that they had textbooks. So government schools and private schools were very successful in distributing textbooks. 75% said that they got some help from home, whether it was their mothers or fathers or older siblings. And typically, if you see the pattern across grades, you see that, mothers help younger children. And as kids get older, maybe fathers or older siblings can help because the material is getting more difficult. And 70% said that they did at least one activity in the last week. So even though only a third said they got some material, there was a lot of action, so it was almost like other actors kind of stepped up to fill the gap. Finally, in terms of enrollment issues, because we did ask a bunch of questions on enrollment, if you look at government private split from 2006 to 2014, every year private school enrollment has been increasing. Then it kind of leveled off in 16, 18. It was flat at about 30%. It kind of went, 2006, it was about 16%. So from 16%, it went to about 30%. Then it kind of flattened out. And this year, we actually see a drop in private school enrollment. We also see a slight increase in out of school numbers. Now, having said that, I think we cannot, it's too early to say whether these are final numbers, because schools are still closed. So as and when we kind of come back to so-called quote unquote kind of normal, I think it will be very, very important for schools to figure out and teachers to figure out what the learning loss is and kind of to build on that. I mean, you can't go back to, one thing that is clear that this has taught us is you can't go back to business as usual in this. Parents have always understood that education is very important, right? And so maybe this has just been that, we need to, because that my kid is not going to school, I need to do something to make sure that, that he or she remains, that they remain on track. Now, but having said that, if you look at the education level of parents over time, that has also been increasing. And I think, again, we need to leverage that moving forward. The fact that you have this huge, so you have a school infrastructure, and then you have a home infrastructure, and what this is telling us is that we need to kind of bring them closer to each other. And so while reaching out to the kid is important, we may want to figure out how we want to reach out to the parents as well, because they are a huge resource. Because as part of the survey, we also called about 9,000 teachers and headmasters, and because we also visit schools. And one of the things that was really interesting from there is that close to about, I think, 70% said that they reached out to the community in trying to get hold of students. Now that's huge, right? Because even the schools that they actually reached out in trying to, where they could not, they didn't have phone numbers, or they were trying to locate students, so whether it was village pradhan, other elders in the village, older kids in the village, that they reached out to somebody in the community. And I think that is huge. So this thing about that, we have a huge resource, that children have a huge resource, whether it is their immediate family or extended family or the community, right? And we need to bring these spaces together. I don't know actually if anybody is even talking about this. What is going to happen? Okay, so school shut down end of March. There is no sign of anything opening. We're talking about second waves now, right? So if this goes on till the end of March, then you will have the scheduled summer vacation time. And let's say that, kids are back in July. Now, what happens? What grade are they in? That means there's a whole academic year gone. But, so do we just write off 1 year? Now think about it. They've had a summer vacation for 1 year. Okay, basically. Right. And so priority number one would be to figure out where are our kids, and to bring them to the level that where we left them, I think would be the first step. And then and then kind of move with that. And that's where the role of community and parents come in. So reach out to the parents, design a program, design activities, so that bringing kids to the level that you want them to, involving, because it's a huge job, and it's not one party's job. Sending that one message every day, which is what we've been doing, one little activity that parents can do. And this is what we mean by reaching to the parents, right? So there used to be maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, it used to be the case that 50% kids in rural India had mothers who had never been to school. Now that number is down to 30%, right? And only about 15% kids who have fathers who've never been to school. So as education levels have been rising, education levels of parents have also been rising. But it's not as if that but you still need to bring it to their level and involve them, right? And so that that they take ownership.